Okay, so quickly to go over what I'm doing here is I'm walking over to the left and there's going to be a flood here which is going to spot you, and as he spots you, you want to start walking backwards and shoot off his left arm. After you do that, you turn around and throw a nade to move these boxes out of the way, and then you want to stand exactly where I stand, just in front of that black line, and then he'll start punching towards you, and you just want to keep walking backwards as he's punching towards you, and then jump over his head like that, and then melee the flood to make him move back faster. At this point, I'm just showing you how you can manipulate the flood to face in a different direction, and this is the exact direction you want the flood facing so that you can put him into position properly. And this is just showing the final position you want the flood in before you start the trick. You just want him to be in the middle of this black chunk on the edge of the platform, and pretty much his entire shoe off the platform as well. So this part is literally just to make it easier to practice. You wouldn't do this in an actual run. You need to kill all the enemies outside except from the carriers stood on top of the pelican, and then just walk into that room and melee or jump to delay the checkpoint. Right, so for this you kind of want to do it all in one fluid motion. You want to transition into looking directly up underneath the flood and also kind of creeping off the edge and then catching yourself using a melee cancel. So on control that's BY, and then obviously on mouse and keyboard that'll be whatever you have it bound to. So a melee and a swap weapon at the exact same time in order to catch yourself underneath the flood. It's also worth mentioning that you don't want to touch the flood at all during this transition to being underneath him, because if you do, then you're going to push him further inbounds, which will make him much harder or basically impossible to transition to getting him onto your head and starting flying. So this is roughly the direction you want to be facing before you start the fly, and also where you want to be relative to the flood so that you're centered enough to where you can keep control over him and he won't spin. So to make this simpler for the tutorial, B means melee, Y means swap weapons, and A means jump. So a BYA is a melee switch weapon jump all at once, and a BY is melee switch weapon. Right, so now you're underneath the flood and you're facing the correct position. In order to start flying, we need to hold back right on the thumbstick, or whatever you have back right bound to once this comes out on PC. So for most people that'll be S and D, but for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just going to say back right on the left thumbstick. So hold back right on the left thumbstick and start pressing BYA about at the rhythm that both the plasma pistol and the carbine finish the swap weapon animations. Press BY at the exact rhythm. You can see me doing it. You can see the rhythm which I'm pressing BY, and just press that all the way until you get to the wall, or at least past the corner of the wall that sticks out, because that is where the death barrier ends. So you need to get past that part before you start to fall. Once you get past that part, you want to stop pressing A altogether and just spam BY. What that does is stops you completely. So we call that a mid-air stop. So you want to force a mid-air stop by spamming BY. So falling on this version is very simple. Essentially, when you want to start falling, you'll do your mid-air stop by spamming BY, and then you just want to continue spamming BY whilst holding all the way back on the left thumbstick. As for how much you want to fall, I will highlight on screen, but just as a mental note, you want to fall 6 times past the fog. Right, so before you start flying towards the trigger, you're most likely not going to be facing the correct angle. So once you've finished falling, what I want you to do is use the technique of crouching to detach the flood from your head, and after you do that, you want to use minute adjustments with using the left stick in order to recenter yourself and manipulate the direction of the flood. Now, I say using the left thumbstick because it's kind of counterintuitive. You'd think that you'd use the right stick to change direction, but you actually don't. In order to change direction is by using the left thumbstick. Once you are facing the direction, literally just use the same technique as you did for the first fly and just start flying, holding back right on the left thumbstick and pressing BY at the exact same rhythm. For now, it's also probably worth mentioning that if you do get too much speed, which it's honestly, there's no point in me even showing you examples of you gaining too much speed, because after you do this for a while, you will be able to gauge how fast you're going, how fast you're allowed to go during this trick. If you do get too much speed and you start to recognize that you're getting too much speed on this second fly, then just mid-air stop. Do exactly what I taught you how to do in the first section and just spam BY to force a mid-air stop, readjust if necessary, and then just keep flying again. You should not need to do more than 3 flies in order to complete this trick. If you are taking more than 3 flies, then you're gaining too much speed, and what that'll most likely be down to is you not being centered correctly. So go back to the start and look at my example of how centered you should really be on the flood. So now we're at the point where we need to find the trigger. From the amount that I told you to drop beneath the fog earlier, you should be right above the trigger. You shouldn't have to fall much at all once you get above it, which just makes this really easy to find it. So I'm going to mark out the corner which you should be gauging where you are relative to the trigger. And basically you want to be slightly right of that corner, and that'll put you right above the trigger, and from there you just want to fall by spamming BY. Now in this example I made it really easy to tell where I am relative to that corner. As you get better at this trick, you'll be able to, just by looking up, you'll be able to tell where you are relative to the trigger through experience, and finding more and more visual guides to go off. But in this particular example, I literally turned so I'm level with level with the structure, and you can see clearly where I am relative to the corner, and I am just slightly right of that corner, and from there you literally just fall into the trigger. So again, I'm quickly just going to commentate over everything that's going on in this full completion of the trick. So we're walking over to the left, we shoot the flood's left arm off, turn around, throw a nade at the boxes, and then a jump onto the platform, stand just before that black line, wait for him to melee at me, walk backwards as he's meleeing, jump over his head, melee him to push him back faster, and then push him into position. Catch him on my head using a BY, spamming BY to get him on your head, getting in the correct position and angle, and then just start flying by pressing BYA, holding back right on the left thumbstick. Fly past the death barrier, spam BY to come to a full stop. Hold back on the left stick and spam BY to fall. Do that until I've fallen 6 times past the fog. Readjust, ready for the second fly, and then just start flying again, holding back right on the left thumbstick and pressing BY at this rhythm. And you can see that I'm gaining a lot of speed in this example because I'm not centered amazingly. So I come to a stop by spamming BY, and then I do a third fly. So now I'm just flying towards the trigger. Now I know for sure I'm above the trigger, so I can just spam BY until I fall into it. Right, so this is a situation you're going to find yourself in a lot when you first start learning this trick. And the situation is where the flood is spinning on your head from the very start because you're not centered correctly underneath him. So how to fix it is there's a prerequisite that you need to be at a complete stop and not traveling horizontally at all. If you are traveling horizontally and the flood's spinning, then in order to come to a complete stop, spam melee and switch weapons. So in my case, that's BY. Spam that, and eventually the flood will stop. And then once you're at a complete stop, crouch. So for me, that's left stick in. Crouch, and that'll detach the flood from your head. At which point you then want to do quick, minute adjustments using the left stick or whatever the way you move in the game is. So once this comes out on PC, that'll be WASD for most. So adjust underneath the flood and get recentered like I'm showing on screen here. And then obviously use BY or melee switch weapons in order to catch yourself back on the flood so you don't just fall to your death. And then you can start flying again. It's important that you know how to fix this and that you do fix it if the flood is spinning, because a lot of new people, if the flood's spinning, then they'll just keep flying and pray that it fixes, or pray that the flood takes them in the right direction. But that's not what you want to do, because one, it's very slow, and two, the idea behind getting good at this trick is you want to have as much control over the flood as possible. And when the flood's spinning, you have literally zero. So please, please, please learn to fix this first and foremost before even think about getting towards the trigger. One thing to highlight about falling that can go wrong though is the flood can slip away from you as you're falling. If this happens, then you want to do exactly what you did at the start in order to recenter yourself. So as you're falling and you see him start to slip away, in order to prevent him from just falling completely off your head, what you'd want to do is crouch to detach him and then readjust using your left thumbstick and recentering, and then you can continue falling. If at any point a melee goes through and you hit the flood, then that just means that you're holding the buttons down too long when you press them. They need to be very light taps, or else melees will start to connect and cause the flood to do weird things. Most of the time you will punch the flood off your head, like shown in this example. Okay, so this is the section for people that can already complete the trick. And by what I mean by that is maybe they're not 100% consistent at it yet. They're not the fastest. You find yourself doing 3 flies pretty much every time to get to the trigger, and you still don't quite have the control over the flood that somebody who is 100% consistent at the trick and can get faster times. So this is going to teach you, how to get to that level where you're getting like the sub 150s, the sub 140s, which a lot of the better runners can do every time. So yeah, if you're not at that level and you can't complete the trick at all, or you can't complete the trick to a relatively okay standard yet, then please just don't even bother watching this. Just go back to the first part of this tutorial and try and focus on mastering that. So not only does spamming BY in between your BY inputs help to speed you up, it also helps a lot in maintaining control over the flood, because whilst you're traveling slowly, if you're taking too long in between your BYA inputs, then the flood can start to slide off your head, and that basically means you have less control over the flood because you'll gain speed too quickly. So this will help with consistency for sure. Essentially, doing the 2 fly the most consistent way for full game, what you're going to want to do is, instead of just stopping immediately past the corner which I highlighted earlier where the death barrier ends, you want to just carry out that first fly as long as you can, without gaining too much speed obviously, and then do your mid-air stop and fall beneath the fog. This is just going to allow you to carry more distance out in the first fly, so you don't have to carry as much distance out in the second one, and therefore risk gaining too much speed on your second fly. Another key part of doing the 2 fly consistently is making sure your the angle on your second fly is good. And by good, I mean aiming aiming quite heavily towards the wall. This yeah, it slows you down, but in terms of for full game, I'm talking, it'll slow you down enough to where you can keep a good enough speed to where you aren't going to risk the flood flying off your head, and you're also going fast enough to get these sub 140 kind of times, which you should be aiming for in full game as you get better at this trick and better at the game in general. So another tip to help control speed is holding forward on the left thumbstick. Now usually when you're flying, you always want to be holding back right on the left thumbstick in this trick. But if you hold forward on the left thumbstick, it does slow you down slightly. Now the only time you ever want to use this is as you're approaching the trigger on the second fly. Never use it on the first fly because it just slows you down unnecessarily. So if on the second fly you feel like you can make it without needing to incorporate a third fly, but you are gaining a lot of speed, then just hold forward on the left thumbstick. It'll slow you down slightly, not drastically, but it will just help you be more consistent essentially. You also wouldn't want to do this at all if you're attempting an IL. Right, so this pretty much is everything I have to say on this trick. I think I covered everything that you need to know. But if I have missed anything and you're having troubles with something in specific, then please comment it because there's a solid 99% chance I will know how to fix that issue. And I can easily get back to you with a text reply if that'll do, or even a video reply if necessary. Yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this helps. Um, yeah, cheers.